Jesi milostivi čovekoljubiv Bog i tebi slavu uznosimo, Otcu i Sinu i Svetome Duhu, sada i u vekove vekova.
In a world of shadows and secrets untold, where primeval stories make the brave go cold, mighty gods on high and realms below, whispers of legends that shape each soul. And nightmarish dreams, cryptids lurking, nothing's as it seems. Giants walking, angels and demons fight. Only truth can bring the light. Through the echoes of time, the tales unfold. Mysteries arise as the prophecies are foretold. From valiant knights to buried treasure, this podcast brings nothing but pleasure. Welcome to myth, mysteries and majesty. Study with us and don't be a travesty. Theology, mythology, fantasy and horror. From dungeons and dragons to Skyrim and Mordor. The powers haunt the evening in gothic castles where they're screaming. Wizards cast spells in their towers tonight, exploiting enigmas hidden from our sight. Archaeologists make excavations deep of the ancient tombs where pharaohs sleep. In the dust of ages we chronicles keep, storytelling's power of monsters that creep. Mysteries and majesty is the place for you to learn about this haunted space. From scholarship to manuscripts of old, unlock the secrets of wisdom and gold.
Blessed Friday, everyone. Welcome to episode 210. We'll be talking about Nikola Tesla, a Serbian-American engineer who was born in the middle of the 19th century, lived until the middle of the 20th century. He was an engineer, a futurist, a scientist, inventor, and we also want to especially dissect the last potential role that he played as a prophet. Why was his life and why were his inventions so important? Well, because he was known as the genius who lit the world, especially the 20th century. He invented the alternating current or AC system, the foundation of our modern electrical grid. Then he was the main player, quote unquote, when it comes to long distance electricity transmission that beat Thomas Edison's DC or direct currency. He famously demonstrated at 1983, and we'll mention this later, at Chicago World's Fair, empowering the first hydroelectric plant at Niagara Falls. He's also well known when it comes to radio technology, his Tesla coils. So we'll be dealing about when it comes to all of his life and technology inventions. But as I said, I want to especially touch his part when he was dealing with visions where he was having headaches. He was having these visions where he would receive sort of a light in his mind, and he would receive the whole blueprints of so many different things that he had to write down immediately. And then we want to address and find out, was this a gift from God? And was this, if we can even relate this to some of the Old Testament prophets' lives where they would receive instructions from God, how to build things. So yeah, welcome to episode 210. Shaun, based on your knowledge about Tesla's life, his inventions, the said ending of his life and how he was unjustly treated, how can you summarize his life? And do you think God was involved in his life by bestowing certain gifts when it comes to his mind?
Yeah, I mean, he's the probably the greatest inventor the world has ever known. Um, it's it's apt that Elon Musk's company is named Tesla because a lot of the things that Tesla wanted to do have now been accomplished by Musk. Whereas the technology just didn't exist before. He knew what he wanted to do, he knew the ideas, but he was frustrated that there wasn't the technology to bring it about. Um, and so, yeah, I think that he was probably 100 years ahead of his time. He created the induction AC motor, which it was something that is literally just his brainchild. Nobody else ever thought that was possible. Um, and that powers everything from your factory big motors on machines to the Tesla vehicles use induction AC motors. Your washing machine uses induction AC motors. A lot of public transportation use those. It's crazy that the entire world was basically changed by the man who was like, "Hey, we can use electricity to go from just an electrical force or heat energy into kinetic force that can be used to power things." Um, he had a theory that he wanted to uh, have free power for everybody, and the way that he thought that that would work is that he assumed that the earth worked like a capacitor storing up energy, and he wanted to be able to transmit that energy across the world for free, helping people who were uh, first he wanted it done in America because he saw himself as an American, even though there was a period of time where America didn't necessarily treat him so well because of the fact that he was living at the time of the Great War, and they knew that he was a Serbian by native birth. But he made it very clear in the book that I read for this episode that he considered himself an American first, which is definitely a profound thing, and would have been definitely profound at the time. But yeah, he wanted to take that technology and spread it all throughout the world. He thought that that would help to alleviate tensions that ended up causing wars. He was a man who sought peace, and he wanted to understand the way that peace would be able to come about. And he thought that was only through alleviating all of the needs of the people so that they weren't fighting over resources. And he sought to be the man to do that, which I think is a very noble effort. Um, and lastly, I want to touch on this before we get into the episode because there will be Christians that are saying, "Why are you talking about Tesla? He was a staunch atheist." Um, and there will be non-Christians that say, "Why are you trying to baptize Tesla because he was a staunch atheist?" Um, we think that God can use anybody. We know that Tesla's father was a clergy member. We know that his grandfather on his mother's side was clergy. So it wasn't as if he was ignorant to the things of God. He just was somebody who subscribed to the mechanical view of everything in the universe. And so he didn't see a need for God. He didn't uh, place any stock in the supernatural or the spiritual. But that's really because he was a product of his time. He saw what was happening with the spiritualist movement, and he saw all of the hoaxes, and he could see right through them. And so he said, "I haven't seen anything compelling from spiritual energy." And yet, here he is dreaming up things about mechanical energy and bringing them to life. And so he's like, that this doesn't produce anything. Superstitions don't produce anything. Um, but I think that God definitely used him mightily, and we're still not only using his technology, but we're still learning about his technology today. Um, the Wi-Fi towers that are everywhere. Um, that's basically his technology that he invented 100 years ago, and we're still finding purposes for it. So yeah, definitely a great man.
Okay, so I have sources and books that actually show that he wasn't an atheist, and he just didn't believe in a personal God that rewards and punishes, and maybe existence of hell. He was kind of very private in general about his life, including the religious and spiritual life. But we do have evidence that he was a believer, not just but not in a sense that we would as evangelicals and Protestants see, like someone who reads the Bible all the time, goes to church all the time, takes the sacraments, prays to God. He lived a very eccentric lifestyle, and he was very devoted to his lifestyle. And as we will discern going through his life and some of the articles, including one written by an Orthodox priest, he wasn't an atheist, even though some atheists like to claim him for himself. But he wasn't also what we would consider necessarily a born again believer. And I know this is very biased coming as a Serbian. Also, we would share the same ethnicity and name. But if I would be able, if I would stand before God one day and he says, hey, if you have the list of 5 or 10 people that ever existed, besides Jesus, of course, that you like to talk to in top 10, who would be? So Nikola Tesla would be certainly among those top 10. I'll have questions. I like to hang out with him. He was such a noble, such a quiet, such a humble, non-materialistic, ascetic type of a guy. And I think we'll have so many things in common besides just names and ethnicity. And yeah, his lifestyle was very noble. His goals were very noble, even godly. But the way he was treated by J.P. Morgan and Edison made me think, God forgive me, this is a sin, but made me think, God, I hope in the afterlife you dealt with Edison and J.P. Morgan accordingly. And then when I was thinking about hell, I was like, it's not that bad that hell exists. And again, if I'm sinning, may God rebuke me, correct me. But after reading in full his biography, I was like, I hope these two guys got what they deserve after all the evil and injustice they did to Tesla. But yeah, when it comes to his life, I'll start from the very beginning. Once when he was walking with his friend in a park of Budapest, and this was in 1882, Tesla was suddenly struck with a vision. Following a blinding flash of light, he saw the complete workings of a motor that used a rotating magnetic field to produce an electric current that alternated its direction many times per second. So he was just minding his business, walking with a friend in a park, and just he said he saw a vision of a motor. We don't know how this vision looked like, just like when we read the Bible, we don't know how prophets received the vision. So Tesla grabbed a stick and diagrammed the motor in the sand. And of course, this is nothing to do when Jesus was writing in the sand, but it just reminded me of that a little bit. So his friend was watching Tesla start writing because he didn't want to, he wanted to make sure that he got every detail sure. And like his friend was shocked. He was like, what's up with all of this? I mean, after all, this machine was theoretically impossible for that time. So in fact, 7 years earlier, his professor at a college in Austria ridiculed Nikola Tesla for Tesla suggesting that direct current generators could be modified to produce an efficient alternating current. So Tesla was dreaming about this thing for a while. It wasn't just like suddenly he saw a vision and then he started thinking about this. He's been thinking about this for a while, even proposing to a professor in Austria. But then things are changing when he received that vision. So Tesla, because of his bad experience with the professor, he dropped out of college a year later, but his imagination never quit. So shortly after this spark revelation, Tesla took the first step to make it a reality. He relocated to Paris to work for the Continental Edison Company, where he was installing lighting systems in commercial properties. But his passion was still there. That was to do something more, right? Like we, especially as men, we have this deep purpose and desire to do more. It's not necessarily materialistically, but to leave a legacy behind us. So Tesla's passion was to design improvements to the equipment that was brought overseas from Edison and his ideas. So if Tesla would catch the attention of his superiors with his work, that was his mindset back then, there could be a chance that he would be able to get a chance to present his revolutionary motor and to win funding and support that he needed to start this project. Um, so yeah, Tesla's ideas were quickly noticed, and several ideas of his were implemented to improve Edison direct current dynamos. A year later, Tesla was in Strasbourg, France, to repair a railway lighting system. So he was an engineer, among other things. He made the necessary repairs, but that wasn't all he did. He built the first prototype of his visionary alternating current motor, which worked exactly as he had conceived it in his mind. His own miracle in hand, Tesla immediately courted investors for his radical device. And then one by one, all these businessmen that couldn't understand, of course, his ideas, his visions, and this scientific and engineering work, but they decided that, well, they saw it was a good project to invest because, of course, they were caring about profit. Some of them wanted to they were interested, but they were hesitating to invest because, again, they couldn't understand everything. There was this desire for profit, but as we know, there's the fear of the unknown, and we see this in the spiritual sense, but we see this also in financial sense. I remember when a friend was telling me in the past about starting to invest in the stock market, and I was like so scared because I didn't know, because you could have lost everything. So there's this fear of the unknown also when it comes to the business ideas and financial system, because you need to be educated before you make that step when it comes to business deals. So he got interest, but again, because they were not familiar and they were ignorant when it comes to this engineering work, he didn't get so many business deals and investments as he hoped. He was rejected, but he continued. He had faith, so he continued fighting. So he concluded that the only way he could realize his motor was to meet the world's greatest electrical engineer, Thomas Edison, directly. And I can't imagine his disappointment of meeting his hero, so to speak, and later actually finding out, hey, I'm meeting this great inventor or this celebrity. But once when you meet this person that you couldn't wait to meet, that was your hero, so to speak, you're so disappointed because there is one aspect of our personality, like here on the podcast, people can think we're like such saints, like we do ministry, we're here faithfully Fridays, Sundays. But they don't know other sides about us. They'll be disappointed if they will find thing or two. That's why I like to be transparent. I tell people there's nothing really special about me except Christ. And there's still many things about my life that need to be sanctified to become more like Christ. So I can't imagine Tesla's disappointment when he later met Edison, and how Edison screwed him and what he did behind his back. And we're getting to that point. But I want to stop here and give you any amount of time you like to comment, and especially we can focus on these sort of visions when he was having, because the vision he received again wasn't just a vision out of blue. He was thinking about that, and out of blue, this vision came while he was walking park. And later, when he went to Strasbourg and he was putting things to pieces, so to speak, this was working. So it's like, well, who gave him the vision? How did he receive immediately this project, this patent, this whole blueprint with all the fine details, and that was working? I know the skeptics will say, well, we know also from the first Enoch, they're like the fallen watchers who giving forbidden technology to the humankind because they wanted to corrupt people and they wanted to abuse technology. But as later we'll see in Tesla's life, there's not even a hint of his false or bad motives to abuse technology. Even when he lost the money, he continued working because for him as an ascetic, money was not that important. So what are your thoughts so far?
Nico, you live in an enchanted world where the skeptics are conspiracy theorists and believe in Nephilim. I love it. I love it. um, yeah, with Tesla, his visions in the book that you had me read, man, it starts off like he's talking about these visions as like a curse, like he can't function. He'll hear something, it'll trigger some sort of vision, and he's like, it's more real than reality. Like I can walk through it and see it from the other angle. um and it's it must
So
be
it was
just,
very 3D. You're saying
yeah.
basically it was very 3D.
Oh
Like
yeah.
playing a 3D game, like you're immersed into it. You can like go around it, you can touch it, you can change the angles and stuff. That's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah, and he even said that he could see in such great detail, and it wasn't just static. Like he could say, okay, well, I want to change this, and then it would change. And I want to change the angles of these screws, and it would change before him, and that would become the new permanent fixed idea. Um he even claimed that the method that he had was so much more efficient than um the lab testing that people do when they're trying to create something, and then it fails, and then it fails, and finally they get a product right. He goes, he said at one point in the book, I could create a turbine and run it in my mind and see where the imbalances are in the turbine, and then go and correct those. And then once I get it working, put it together. He says, I've never had anything that I had created in my mind that I then created in the lab that didn't work exactly the way I thought it would. Um, so on one hand, I think that we can totally say that he what he received was absolutely a gift from God. But that doesn't mean that we conflate that with the spiritual gifts, that the Holy Spirit gives. There are plenty of people who have a gift from God that is maybe designed to bring about their own destruction. um and so I don't know, like, anyone who hears us say, well, this was a gift from God, this doesn't necessarily mean that God was showing salvific favor on Nikola Tesla necessarily. Just that this was Nico was the means that God was going to use to bring about the things that needed to happen. Um and I think that one way that we could try to psychologize it is to say that he might have had an overdeveloped visual cortex in which he could hold an image in his mind at this point, even without his will. Like his brain was just superimposing the image onto reality, and he could see the way that it would move and operate. It didn't start off with inventions. In fact, the inventing part was what he used to combat the images. The first images that he said would show up in his mind were images of things that were very emotionally triggering for him. Like he would keep replaying, like going to a funeral, and it would just be kind of stuck there. And so he said that he had like a reel of images that he could go through and replace that image with. But when he ran out of images that he had in his mind, he had to go and explore and look for more scenes in order to be able to replace these awful images with the better images. He then used that same concept to then start working on inventions. And it wasn't like, oh, hey, we'll just go from here to here. But there was a transitions that happened in which he finally shifted direction to where, oh, well, I'm going to use this for good, instead of just having it plague me. And so I think that's also important to remember, is it's not something that Nico ever he didn't ever just like wake up to, oh, hey, I've got this download from God. Like this was a continuous thing throughout his life, and at first it caused a lot of problems with him. And then finally he learned how to live with it, and eventually he used it in order to bring about not only his greatness but the greatness of the entire 20th century.
That was so beautiful. I enjoyed listening to you. I will also want to throw a small theory of mine. I'm not saying this is true, but while I was listening to you, I was thinking, what if God, knowing Tesla's heart, and I want to especially emphasize this for reformers, no one is good and stuff like that. Yeah, we are all sinners. We get it. I'm not saying Tesla was good without God. But what if God saw that Tesla's intentions were not to get super wealthy, not to rule the world, not to become egoistic, this extremely selfish pioneer with all these technology and inventions that will be all about him? What if God saw and even gifted him type of a heart where like I just need funds so I can like these are the D&D cards that dice that I bought for PJ's games that I still didn't open. I'm waiting for him. But what if like I need to make this, but I don't have money, I don't have funds to create this. So what if God gave him the type of heart and the type of thinking that will like work together in a beautiful way, and knowing that he won't abuse it, God through one person will give light and other inventions such as wireless, technology, such as so many things, Tesla coil, radio technology, because through one person who wouldn't abuse it, billions upon billions would benefit. And what if then, if Tesla, just like this works in Christianity, God gives you one thing. If you're faithful, God gives you more. So what if Tesla, by showing faithful, he was given this sort of a heavenly library where he can actually walk and say, hey, this doesn't work, so I want to change color, I want to change the motor, I want to change this frequency, I want to change the angle, and then it would work. It would work. How can a new technology that doesn't exist, but you just project it or see it in your mind, and without being materialized, you're like already planning on doing something differently, and it always works, or most of the times. How can it works unless it's given to you? So again, when we check First Enoch, they were giving weaponry, they were giving makeup, they were giving alchemy, they were giving the occultic knowledge to people to corrupt them. We don't see anything bad given to Tesla. We don't see that this power or knowledge corrupted him. We don't see that his desire was to corrupt humankind. So this was, I'm inclining to say this was divine's gift and that came from divine library. So what if God saw his heart and mind that he doesn't want all of this for himself, but to give to others? So I'm like, yeah, here you go, my son. Here you go. So that's why I was getting the theory that started developing in my mind while I was listening to you. And also the thing that reminds me about you when I was reading about Tesla's life is that he had this perfect photographic memory. So like what he saw, he would be able to recite, to write down, to pull up from memory. That's like, I never had this. That bothers me and I get jealous because you just read a book or you read an article, you hear the news 10 years ago and you can now tell us the whole sermon about it. I can't. That's why I have to read notes. Even if I read them today or yesterday, 5 days ago, I still have to read them, when we use the podcast. So it's like, God certainly gifted him in so many areas. And I'm leaning way towards that divine gifting than demonic gifting, because we see nothing in his life that like he had evil inclination or evil desire to abuse this. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. And I had even I should have mentioned that too. One of the things that I was just so fascinated by is his photographic memory and his ability. I think that it said in his My Inventions, that he would recite to himself the pages of Faust that he had read. And so he's a Serbian. He's living in America. He had lived in England. He speaks English and Serbian, but he would recite it to himself in German. How many
He
languages can
knew
a guy know?
7 languages because
Yeah,
he also lived in Hungary. He lived in
yeah,
France. Eventually, lastly, he lived in America, but he spoke
yeah,
7 languages.
yeah,
He was man. If people think Elon Musk is impressive, imagine someone with way less wealth, but with IQ out of this world. That he would, because Elon Musk cannot make things out of his own. He's brilliant, but he still needs help of engineers and scientists. Tesla was the opposite. He was coming up with all of this by the gifting of God, as we understand,
yeah.
but he needed the funds. So if Tesla had the money that or the abilities or and the labs and the staff that Elon had, Tesla would be way surpassed. His wealth will be probably dozens of trillions. But that this was not his heart. In his heart of hearts, he stayed single. He didn't want to marry. He didn't sleep much because he was so devoted to this type of like a single life, bachelor's life, that like it's about this mission. It's about this. I have to come up with new, projects, with new patterns, with new, inventions, so that it will be a blessing to people. So that he didn't have peace. That's why he sacrificed. He didn't eat much. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, like, isn't this what ascetics in the history of the church? That's what I did. But unfortunately, he didn't devote his life to God, which doesn't. But that doesn't make him like some sort of a like, well, he devoted his life to Satan. No, he did not. As we'll soon dissect, he also had respect still for God and for the church, but he just didn't necessarily live that lifestyle. But I just want to say there's so many characteristics between him and the prophets or the ascetics of old. And I mean, it just admiring how he was untouched by so many things. Like, I don't care about women. I don't care about wealth. I
Yeah.
just want to focus on this. So he had one goal. He had this, and he didn't want to give up. He died in poverty, and he was failed and disappointed and hurt by so many people. But my point is, if people think Elon Musk is something special, Tesla was like at least 10 times more.
Well, and to your point, he ended up going to an engineering institute that his parents put him through. His dad did not want him to be an engineer; he wanted him to be clergy. And Tesla was like, "Dude, I want to be an engineer." And his dad was against it until Tesla got sick, and the doctors had basically gave up on him, like, "You're gonna die." And he his dad was like, "Well, perhaps if I would have allowed you to pursue engineering, God would have spared you." And so he says, "If God spares you, you can go to the best institute in the country." And so they come out with the cure for whatever it was that was plaguing him, and he ends up having a full recovery. And then he goes to this institute, and to your point about him not eating and sleeping very much, they ended up getting a hold of his father and said, if you don't come get him, he's going to die, because he's only sleeping 3 hours a night, and he's working on all of his practicals and doing all the things that the students normally only spend a few hours on. He's spending days on it. He's so far advanced in all of his stuff, and he's not eating appropriately because he's dedicated himself to this work. And so they told his dad, they're like, you need to come get him or he's gonna die. They were just so amazed at what had happened. And later in the book, he says that his friends are astonished that all of his clothes fit like a glove. Um, they don't realize that these were clothes that were tailored 30 years ago, because he's never gained a pound. He always lived this extremely disciplined, extremely ascetic life. So yeah, I thought I would contribute that to what you had said, because it's such a good illustrative point.
Yeah, thanks for that. We've been enjoying the last 20 minutes. I even forgot about his bio because we've been enjoying and just connecting randomly. Well, not randomly. We've been connecting so many cool things from his life, but praise God for him. So after him getting a referral letter, he finally moved to the States. He came to New York on June 6th, 1884. He had nothing but a few cents in his pockets, a few poems, like you said, like we said. He loved reading. He was obsessed with reading. He spoke 7 languages. He had some calculations for a flying machine that he dreamed of building one day, and this letter of recommendation. He went straight to meet Edison. He briefly described the engineering work he had done for Edison's company and talked about his plans for an alternating current motor. Direct current was barely a decade old when Tesla shook hands with Edison. His distribution network in Manhattan was not only immediately profitable, but it was the only option if you wanted electricity back then. So when Tesla explained the alternating current and that this is the future when it comes to electricity, Edison dismissed it as a fanciful and unnecessary thing. Direct current was getting the job done. People liked it. Edison was making money because he was more than an inventor. He was primarily a businessman, and that was fine with him, but not just with him, also with J.P. Morgan. In Edison's eyes, anything that challenged him and his project was seen, not as something praiseworthy when it comes to science and industry, but as a threat. And this is where things are getting worse. From this point to Tesla's life, things seem to be always up and down until downhill. Um, so, despite his monopolistic perspective, Edison did like Tesla and hired him on the spot to work with his electrical engineers. Tesla's work began with some simple stuff. He was repairing, again, just like in Europe, lighting systems. But within several months, he became one of the Edison's most valuable engineers because his IQ was so above others. He was so above others when it came to thinking, when it comes to engineering, when it comes to making stuff, fixing stuff. So Edison used to call Tesla, and if this as a Christian bothers you, if you think this is a swear word, close your ears for a few seconds. But Edison used to call Tesla as a damn good man. You can unplug your ears. In 1885, Tesla informed Edison that he could greatly improve his direct current generators by redesigning some of the key elements in Edison's structure. Edison thought this was impossible, and he said to Tesla, "I'll give you 50K." 50K back then. I mean, this would be easily like $1 million or more now. So he said, "I will give you 50K if you can deliver this and if you can actually do what you promised." So Tesla took the challenge as, like, hey, man, we just had an agreement, a gentleman's agreement. Like, your word should be, you should keep your word because, like, the whole world knows you, right? So Tesla took that challenge seriously. So he was working tirelessly. And again, he wasn't sleeping a lot his whole life. And it took him a lot of time, maybe even a whole year, to improve Edison's generators, installing his own parts. So once when the whole project was completed, his generators were a vast improvement over Edison's. They were far more efficient and durable, and thus far more profitable. Edison was, of course, impressed. But when Tesla said, "Hey, what about our deal? You promised me 50K," Edison, and this is when my hatred for Edison started. Didn't end, but it started. Edison laughed at Tesla and claimed that he was only joking about reward. He says, "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor." Instead, Edison offered Tesla a raise of $10 more for a week, to be added to his current salary of $18 per week. That was his reward. He got more than double his wages. Tesla was, of course, disgusted because he trusted this man. He loved this man. He was almost like his hero. And then you meet your hero. Imagine for us on the channel meeting Dr. Heiser, and of course he's late. He passed away. But let's say he's still alive, and you get to meet him, and he's everything that you didn't expect him to be. That's what kind of shock and disappointment that can lead to depression and like what is happening? That kind of trust, when it's broken, your heart is broken. So I can't imagine that Dr. Heiser wouldn't be as we expect him to be, a gentle, lovely, social, humble guy that he was. So imagine Tesla going to his hero and his hero breaking word. So Tesla resigned because he couldn't work with such a man anymore. So this was the beginning of a lifelong, I don't want to say they were not enemies, but this is the beginning of where their work separated and where they were not fond of each other anymore. Edison called this point of life as his own, Edison's greatest mistake. Betrayed by men he trusted, Tesla found himself unemployed and in desperate need to work and survive. So he found a job, and what was ironic, that he was a ditch digger, but again for Edison's company, because Edison was almost like a monopolist, like he had so many companies. So Tesla was not necessarily depressed, but I would imagine that this will cause depression to anyone. So he described this time as one of the terrible headaches and bitter tears, a dark period so grim that he began to question the value of his education and knowledge. But despite his heartbreak, he continued to expand on his designs for an alternating current system of generators, motors, and transformers. And this is one of the qualities I love about Tesla. Even though he would get he would hit the wall, so to speak, so many times. He will go through depression. He will go through this discouragement, like all of us, right? But he never gave up. He never gave up. So he had another quality of the prophets and the apostles and the Christians. Um, Eventually, some other wealthy investors approached finally Tesla to develop this improved system of arc lighting. The group was willing to finance the so-called Tesla Electric Company, so Tesla agreed. As the proud owner of a new company, he immersed himself in this new venture. Once the company became profitable, Tesla realized that he had been swindled. The vast majority of the earnings were going to the investors, and when he tried to interest them in financing his alternating current motor, they only rejected his ideas. But not only that, they also ejected him from the company. So I don't know who these investors were, but this is the second time when he got duped and crossed, because I can't. If he was a con man, this wouldn't be happening so much to him. But this just speaks of the naivety and this childlike behavior that we have. I remember when I came to Christ, and not just immediately, even after that, I'll be shocked when I hear stories of people doing things and like this and that, and then but then claiming to be Christians, and I'll be like, wait, people do that? And other people will be like, are you naive? Like, yeah, of course people do things like that. But I had this childlike naivety, like, oh, if you're Christian, then you live certain lifestyle. So I was naive. I had these expectations that were not realistic, I guess, at least not for so many people. So I can imagine Tesla was going through something similar. He went from his European experience coming to the America. First, he was tricked by Edison, and now by another group of investors. So again, he was unemployed and broke for the second time in a short time. Now, two men approached Tesla: the director of Western Union and a New York City attorney. And this was in 1887 to learn more about this alternating current theories and designs. After the meeting, they were impressed. They agreed to invest in the project. They set up with Tesla a small lab close to Edison's office, where Tesla quickly developed all the necessary components for the system so that he could finally start working on something that he was so passionate about. So Tesla said later that the motors that he built there were exactly as he imagined them. So again, we are talking about these visions, and I think this is one of the key words in the whole podcast: visions Tesla was getting. So he finally started working on them, and as he said, they were looking exactly as he envisioned them. He made no attempt to improve the design. It's almost like I'm not trying to be blasphemous, but imagine when God was giving the blueprints about the Noah's Ark and later for the temple. It's like, hey, when God gives you the blueprint, you don't change anything because that's a divine design. And Tesla didn't try to improve, at least at the very beginning, he didn't try to improve. The vision he got, he was like, I'm going to build it in the same way. And this is the quote: I made no attempt to improve the design. Later, perhaps, but in this original design, he didn't do anything, but merely to reproduce the pictures as they appeared to my vision, and the operation was always as expected. And I'll stop here, and I'll give you some time to comment on this, and I'll relax my throat.
Yeah, it, Edison there was he probably didn't. I know um, he didn't expect Tesla to be able to actually improve his design at all. And yeah, I mean, I think I'd give you $50,000 you could. Uh, on one hand, I guess I can understand, you know, Edison didn't actually mean that. It was more like there's no way you can do that. But on the other hand, he said it. Tesla improved his product. He's gonna make Edison more money. Yeah, you should have probably given him the $50,000. Also, as you said, they weren't exactly enemies moving forward, and they weren't always rivals. They did work on projects together, but they did kind of become the competing branches of the electrical engineering. That Edison was the direct current and Tesla was the alternating current. And one of the things that Tesla was really passionate about was this idea that with alternating current, you can get very high voltages and you can power um, really high payloads with the alternating current. Whereas with direct current, the higher the voltage goes, the more likely you are to burn the house down because all the wires are getting really hot because of the resistance. So yeah, Tesla's idea was just better. Um, and I think Edison knew that Tesla was the man of the hour, and that by betraying him, he basically gave up his seat in history as the greatest inventive mind to Tesla.
And do you think there could be something in a way that, again, Tesla received visions and he said, "Hey, at least when it comes to that first, product with that first blueprint, once when his first office, his first lab was open, he was like, I'm gonna make this design as exactly I'd received it in my mind." Do you think there could be some parallels, like with Noah, or later when it comes to the tabernacle being built, Solomon's temple, like, hey, don't change anything. These are godly, divine, metrics. Don't play with the measurements because this is all according to God's divine design. And then Tesla again was doing the same thing. So like when there are different things about his life and biography, including these visions, and but also his ascetic lifestyle. Like I keep seeing so many parallels with the prophets and apostles. So it's like that's why I wanted to title this episode by the ending like prophet question mark, because he had those characteristics. He wasn't what you would necessarily maybe see as a biblical prophet per se, but like he had so many characteristics, and he was like, listen, what I received in my mind, I want to build the same thing. I don't want to change it. For me, that's like respect to the gift, respect to the, like, I don't dare to change it because this could have come from some like otherworldly or above me a source, and who am I to change it later on? Again, like, yeah, he was experimenting, he was doing, but at least with here, with it in this instance, it's almost like we're seeing almost some like awe of this otherworldly gift, of this otherworldly blueprint. So I'm like, would you agree that there could be some parallels with the Old Testament prophets?
Absolutely. I think maybe in Tesla's mind, it was more of a, okay, I received this and I'm still trying to understand it. Like I'm learning from this image in my mind, not like this image isn't it didn't emerge out of all of my knowledge. It was more like, hey, this could work, and he's learning about the all of the mechanics from the image. So like, why would I change the image when I'm still learning from it? Um, and like you said, later maybe he got to the point where he could improve upon that. But yeah, I think that there was almost like this sense that this was sacred because it was like it just came to him. It wasn't something that he invented from the ground up.
Yeah, that's so good. So in 1887, Tesla filed for 7 US patents for his inventions, which were so original that they were issued without challenge. These patents comprise a complete system of generators, transformers, transmission lines, motors, and lighting. Man, they would even become the most valuable patent since the telephone. In accordance with their agreement, Tesla split the ownership of the patents on a 50-50 basis with his investors. Tesla had won the battle to produce his revolutionary alternating current motors, but the war was far from over. Tesla was soon invited to lecture before the American Institute of Electrical Engineers. His presentation was lauded as visionary, breakthrough, and incredibly practical. So he was now becoming a big deal, so that his work and his visions became they drew attention of the business magnate at his time, and this gentleman was called George Westinghouse. He was the inventor of the railroad air brake, so he was a multi millionaire. He had a dream of providing electricity throughout the entire US, and he believed that the alternating current was the future of electrical generation and long distance transmission. And this is supposedly a beautiful part, the beginning of a beautiful partnership. So let's see how that did go. So Westinghouse visited Tesla's lab and made an offer for his patents. That was $25K in cash, $50K in stock in his company, and a royalty of $2.5 per horsepower of alternating current motors being sold. Tesla happily accepted. He didn't negotiate. He was like, "Yeah, let's just work on it." He could have asked for more, but as we said at the beginning, he was not known as someone who was money hungry, who was greedy. He was not. He was never known as that person. So after he accepted, he spent half of his cash payment to construct a new lab, and he oversaw the building and installation of alternating current systems across the country. He also immediately began research into what he later gave name as the radiant energy. His studies led him to discover what was known as X-rays and how to use them to produce radiographs. He didn't make his discoveries widely known, however, which is why they would later be attributed to German physicist Wilhelm Röntgen, and that's why we call them with that name. But actually, Tesla was behind that. He was never one to chase recognition, so he wasn't chasing money, he wasn't chasing women, he wasn't chasing fame, he wasn't chasing recognition. Again, so many biblical qualities in one man that unfortunately wasn't even pursuing personal relationship with God because he didn't believe in a personal God that again rewards and punishes, even though he did believe in some sort of a deity. But he was excited and thrilled when it comes to this just discovery and creating things. That was his reward in itself. This was his adrenaline, so to speak. His imagination was affected with unlimited resources, and he was just driven by this imagination and by this devotional life, so to speak, when it comes to engineering and science, and he didn't know how to stop. Edison and Morgan launched a full-scale propaganda, this time assault against alternating current, and this is another reason why I start hating Edison. And this is not new, of course, people have been knowing this for a long time. Edison declared publicly that alternating current delivered to a home would kill a customer within 6 months. So he was lying, of course, to keep his business and to keep his invention, of course. Edison's efforts then took a turn for the grisly. He began holding weekend demonstrations of the supposed hazards, of Tesla's work by electrocuting animals. Yeah, this was what you're here in your American textbooks Edison was doing. He was electrocuting animals on the street. He directed 2 technicians who were doing the same, including the execution of cattle and horses, to supposedly prove to people, like, don't listen to Tesla. His invention is seriously, it's bad. It will just kill you, just it's killing these animals. So Edison was ready to do anything and everything to keep his business and to just destroy Tesla's business. This morbid campaign, if we can call it, because I think it suits him. This morbid campaign climaxed in 1890, when Edison's involvement came to be used of a Westinghouse's generator to execute a convicted ex-murderer. The voltage to kill has been misjudged, leaving the criminal badly injured, and the process had to be repeated. A journalist who was there as an eyewitness described this event as an awful spectacle, far worse than hanging, because the poor man who was supposed to be electrocuted, he just couldn't die at once. The torturous method of execution was dubbed Westinghousing, and Morgan and Edison tried to popularize the extermination idea. So this was a direct attack by J.P. Morgan, another scumbag, and Edison, the first scumbag, against not just Westinghouse, but also, of course, Tesla. Disgusted by another Edison's shameless action, in this case, cruelty and dishonesty, Tesla began performing regular exhibitions of his technology in his lab, in which he lighted lamps by allowing alternating current electricity to flow through his body. So he was doing this basically as like, hey, come and see if this is dangerous, because if you think it's dangerous, I'm going to test it on my body. And again, not trying to force this comparison with the prophets, but this reminds me of the false prophets and true prophets. If they'll be competing, like, hey, if you're God, if you think that you're serving a deity and your prophecy is right, well, then just test it. So Tesla was not afraid of a challenge. He was like inviting people. He was like, not just that I'm not afraid to show you that my technology works, but I'm going to actually test it on my body. So it's like if you would be a prophet in the Old Testament, like if you're a false prophet or a true prophet, you wouldn't be scared to be tested if you're on the side of God and being a true prophet. No, what you say stays if God is behind you. So in this case, we also see another quality of Tesla. Most men would have quietly resigned or begged for scraps, but not Tesla, because he would always go into bankruptcy. He will be always backstabbed. He will be always betrayed. And then he would always start over and over again with new visions, with new patents, with new inventions that he came up with or that God bestowed upon him. I want to skip some of the stuff. So the first milestone in his new research was Tesla's invention of what became known as the Tesla coil, which we mentioned earlier because it's related to radio technology. It was a device that took normal 60 cycle per second alternating current electricity and stepped it up to an ultra high frequency of hundreds of thousands of cycles per second and extremely high voltages. Tesla used this coil to invent the first high efficiency, high frequency fluorescent lamp. In 1891, in his lab, Tesla proved that energy could be transmitted through the air by wirelessly lighting lamps. This discovery fascinated Tesla, sparking his lifelong obsession with wireless energy. Imagine, like, it was the 20th century did not even start it it didn't even start because it was the end of the 19th century. And Tesla was then working on the wireless energy. I mean, what are we talking about? Like, no wonder then some of the scientists still cannot decipher, some of the Tesla's blueprints and discover that he did more than 100 years ago, 150 years ago. He was so outside his time. So Tesla immediately envisioned a network of transmission stations that would provide free wireless technology and energy, not only to the United States, but to the world. I mean, come on, Shaun. He was such a noble guy. He was so humble. He was betrayed and thrown like a false prophet, but he would come back, start doing it again. He was like, listen, I'm making all of this. I'm giving you for free. I'm making this technology that shouldn't exist now. But because of these visions I'm getting, I'm making blueprints and I'm actually producing these patents that were given to me. And I want to give to you for free. I mean, what else can you expect from a guy? Imagine if any businessman, including Tesla, including Elon Musk, whom I like, would come up with something like that. Do you think they would really give you this thing for free? There's no way. He was not just when it comes to business ethics, but also when it comes to his morality. He was such a man outside of his time. Yeah, we would say, well, he was an engineer outside of his time. He was an innovator outside of his time. He was a scientist out of his time. But also when he was dealing with all these things, he could have been charging for everything. He could have been becoming for his time multimillionaire, which will be now a trillionaire. But he was like, listen, let me perfect this, and now you can have it for free. He just wanted business deals with his partners to be done ethically, and then when he's okay, just give to people for free. Don't even charge them for this wireless energy. They need it. So why charging them for that? So again, we know from the Bible, like, when you get something for free, you give it for free. It's a biblical principle. I don't even know if Tesla knew this, even though he was schooled in some of the religion and Bible. As a kid, he used to have biblical classes because, again, he was the son of an Eastern Orthodox priest. So what he was getting for free, supposedly from God, as you and I believe, he was passing for free. I mean, what else can you ask from a guy, from a businessman, from a scientist? Again, I cannot compare him to anyone nowadays. Okay, your comments.
Yeah, I mean, so he was so far ahead of his time that Maxwell's theory about the inverse square of the transmission of electricity, where you lose like the vast majority of your energy as wastage by transmitting it, either through lines or through the air. Nikola had essays where he would just like refute Maxwell's theories, but the Maxwellian idea is still stands today because they don't understand how Tesla did what he did. So that's why they say that it's impossible to send, high voltage electricity through the air because of all of these problems, and you're going to have so much wastage. He claimed that he could do it with 97% efficiency, which is very, very high. I mean, that's almost 100% efficiency, and they don't understand how he would have done that. It's crazy to me that he was so far ahead of his time. Everyone admits he was so far ahead of his time. Everyone admits that he was just like the engineer, the physicist, the guy. But then in this one area where they don't understand him, they're like, "Oh yeah, he was wrong." Like this was the one time in his life that he was wrong. But yeah, he was wrong. Um, it's like, dude, no. And then we use a very similar framework for radio waves, for cell phones, for Wi-Fi, for all. I mean, that's our. At the time he was writing, they had telegraphs. Like they had solid cable that would send pulses of electricity from one city to another. And the technology that he created was so advanced that we're just now digging into it 100 years later and just finding applications for it. But then we look back at him and we're like, oh yeah, but this one thing that he said was his magnum opus, the greatest thing that he would ever do, the greatest contribution to humanity, no, he was wrong about that. Like, man, that's crazy. I think that just shows you that the Edisons and the Westinghouses they still run things, uh, and they're still stepping on Tesla.
And JP Morgan's. I'm upset I have an account with Chase now.
Oh, dude, and JP Morgan. Anyone who knows the history of JP Morgan and what happened on April 12th, right? The fact that he had a first class cabin on a certain ship, and then he just couldn't make it that day. But 13 other bankers who opposed him happened to be on that ship. Like, yeah,
Come on, it's a coincidence, Shaun. Come on.
oh yeah, just a coincidence that everybody who opposed the central bank died on Morgan's ship that Morgan was supposed to be on, but he couldn't make it that day. Yeah, just a coinky dink.
Yeah. Maybe God spoke to him too, like just like to Tesla, right? Of course, I'm being sarcastic. So Tesla's coils help him discover yet another phenomenon that would change the world, and this is what we mentioned like 10 minutes ago: radio waves. When Tesla tuned two coils to resonate at the same frequency, he found that he could send and receive signals. He had accidentally built the first radio transmitter and made the first transmissions methods he would patent within 2 years. I want to skip a little bit. So when it comes to Westinghouse, his corporation won a bid for illuminating the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, which was to be the first all-electric fair in history. The fair was also to be a celebration of the 400-year anniversary of Columbus's arrival to the States. Because of the efficiency of Tesla's inventions, Westinghouse proposal was half of what Edison's newly formed General Electric company required for the job. Edison was furious, of course, because he lost more money because he didn't have enough. And he forbade the use of his light bulbs in the fair because, hey, it's all about me and my money, so screw you. Westinghouse would use Tesla's fluorescent bulb instead, and Tesla even had the idea to bend the glass tubes and thus spell the names of famous scientists. thus the world's first neon signs. Man, and again, it wasn't even the beginning of the 20th century. Dude was so ahead of time. Again, if I can choose top 10 people besides Jesus, meeting them, spending time with them, just chilling, Nikola Tesla would be in the top 10, maybe even number one. So on the evening of May 1st in 1893, over 27 million people were waiting to see this, future when it comes to electricity. When President Grover Cleveland pushed a button, over 100,000 lamps wired to 12 new 1,000 horsepower alternating current generators turned night to day, and everyone was in awe because this is when this wonder was called the City of Light because of what Tesla did at this fair. So during this time, Tesla was basically, he amazed the millions of people who were attending this place, and they were like just in awe when it comes to his inventions. He would also use coils to shoot large, harmless lightning bolts into the crowd. And I think when it comes to him experimenting with lights and with electricity, people can find easily these photos online. And the crowd was both frightened and delighted at this spectacle because, unlike him, they had fear again because of the unknown. They wouldn't know if this can hurt them. But Tesla was, just as always, very transparent about his life and inventions. So within a week, the whole nation, the whole US, we're talking about Tesla, electricity, this so-called the City of Light event, this fair, and this was again, giving a big financial blow to Edison and his discovery. Westinghouse was contacted in 1893 by the Niagara Falls Commission, which had been charged with developing a power plant that would harness the force of the falls. Lord Kelvin, the famous British physicist, he was headed the commission, and after he inspected Tesla's work, lab, and inventions, he was certain that the falls needed to produce. He was sure that everything will be working properly when it comes to this alternating current electricity. So a year later, the Niagara power plant was ready for operation. When the switch was thrown, all worries and anxieties melted because the first power reached Buffalo at midnight, November 16, 1896, nearly 22 miles away. Plans were immediately set in motion to power all of the New York City with the station. Tesla was now praised and given a nickname that I think, honestly, such a cool nickname. He was called the Wizard of the West. Man, such a cool nickname. And you would think, wow, praise God, finally things start happening, going better for Tesla because he deserved. But not for too long. I don't even know if he ever had a long season in his life when he was so peaceful and happy and blissful and just enjoying the fruit of his labor and being honestly paid. He was always calm. He was always strict. He was always cross because of his childhood naivety and being so honest with people. So again, going back to J.P. Morgan, who controlled Edison's direct current patents, he was now fully convinced that alternating current had defeated Edison's work. Well, I mean, that was known years ago, but because they were like together working with Edison, he didn't want to give up. So he approached Westinghouse to strike a deal. Morgan did not care what kind of electricity was used, of course, because he was just interested in making even more money. So in that way, he was worse than Edison. One of the Morgan's managers, Charles Coffin, gloated to Westinghouse about how easily Morgan had established Edison's monopoly by bribing local politicians and installing systems that are too expensive to change. The same could be done for Westinghouse and alternating current, Coffin claimed, one of those Morgan's managers. But Westinghouse rebuffed Morgan's offer and made it clear that their style of business were not compatible. And this is why Westinghouse and Tesla worked for a time being, because they seem to be both very honest. And when it comes to, especially to their business ethics, Morgan came up with a new strategy that would become one of his hallmarks. He spread rumors to Wall Street that Westinghouse company was financially unstable, which was a lie. Which which discouraged investors from giving Westinghouse the capital that he needed to expand the production and installation of his generators. Morgan then began an attack through stock manipulation and moved to gain control of the Westinghouse Corporation, and by doing that, inevitably Tesla's patents. So we see as Edison was a scumbag, so was J.P. Morgan. And again, this is why hell exists. By the end of 1897, Westinghouse was nearly bankrupt, and it looked as though Morgan would usurp everything that Tesla and Westinghouse had built together. Westinghouse owed Tesla over 1 million in royalties, and you go back 150 years ago or 130 years ago and try to calculate how much that would be nowadays. But this amount was even growing day after day. When Westinghouse described to Tesla the desperate situation, Tesla replied with the following, and I want everyone to pay attention because this was another, I would even dare to say, godly characteristic of Tesla, who didn't even have relationship with the creator in a way that we would expect nowadays. So this is what Tesla responded to Westinghouse after their Westinghouse company was going through bankruptcy and Westinghouse was owing so much money to Tesla. And he came to apologize, say, hey, I'm broke, I have no money to pay. So listen to what Tesla did, as if he would be the greatest of us among the Christians. He says, Mr. Westinghouse, you have been my friend. You believed in me when others had no faith. You were brave enough to go ahead when others lacked courage. You supported me when even our own engineers lacked vision. I'm getting goosebumps all over my arms. Here is your contract, Mr. Westinghouse, and here's my contract. I will tear them both to pieces, and you will no longer have any troubles for my royalties. Imagine giving up on $1 million 150 years ago. That would be easily as giving up on maybe hundreds of millions nowadays. That was like, don't worry, because I have my inventions, I have my desires, I have my passions. That's what I need for now. Let us continue working together. But so these royalties would have made Tesla the world's first billionaire, because the amount was getting up and up every day that based on Tesla's royalties. So that will eventually go to such a number that will be, I think, even go above maybe Solomon's wealth in due time. So instead, Tesla didn't get the money, he lost the money, and this enabled Westinghouse to save his company. Tesla's selflessness was a testament not only to his generosity and goodwill, but also his belief in and his ability to continue to create his future. Tesla wrote this: there's something within me that might be illusion, as it is often case with young, delighted people. But if I would be fortunate to achieve some of my ideals, it will be on the behalf of the whole of humanity. I'll just stop here. I'm so much in love with this dude. I truly hope that somehow he ended up in the kingdom of God. I truly hope. No one deserves, but man, basically on everything he did, everything he had to give, all the desire he wanted to just to give all of this to humanity, all the injustice he received. I'm like, dude, I just wish he was received in God's arms when he passed away in poverty. Shaun, what are your thoughts so far?
Yeah, man, he was the best of us. He was somebody who believed in himself, went out and did the hard stuff, and then didn't seek recognition for it. He went to basically fight with people who were doing what's wrong just because he was going to do what was right. With the World's Fair thing, he was like, yeah, I can supply the what was it, 100,000 light bulbs or whatever, like. And this was at a time before they were manufactured on an assembly line, so who knows how many months he was working to create this many for so that way they could have at the World's Fair, they could have lighting, and then went the extra step to, hey, we'll do some of these and we'll use it to spell out the names of scientists. that's working with hot glass. That's pulling glass. That's, I mean, the level of finesse that you have to do that, and then just say, I'm gonna stack that on top of the responsibilities that I already have because Edison backed out of a contract, and now I'm gonna make it my problem so that the world doesn't have to be in the dark. Uh, I don't know, and I almost think that's a great depiction of Tesla. I'm gonna do all this so the world doesn't have to be in the dark. Like, yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So a little bit later in 1899, Tesla announced his latest invention, a way to remotely control machines with radio technology. Thanks to his Madison Square Garden demonstration of remotely driving a small metal boat through an indoor pond, many spectators believed that he was somehow controlling the boat with his mind, which is funny because I remember when my late dad bought their first TV with the remote control. I don't know how many decades ago. I don't even know if I was alive. And he invited his brother, my uncle, to show him the TV. And he was pranking my late uncle. He says, "Hey, if you approach to the TV and just blow in it, it will change the channel." And my uncle was like, "No way, that won't happen." And my dad was like, "No, no, no, seriously, if you would just approach the TV and blow in it, it will change the channel." And it was like a challenge. I don't know if they were betting, and my uncle approached the TV. My dad told me the story when I was growing up. My uncle would approach the TV, and my dad from the distance he would be changing the channel with the remote control, and my uncle would blow in TV, and the channel would change. He was like, "Wow, this is really working." So yeah, my dad was a big jokester, and was also my uncle. So probably my uncle got my dad for something else later in life. But I'm just saying, this is what people would believe when they don't understand anything. And Tesla was so much ahead of his time that, look, before the remote controls came in our lives for AC, for TV, for so many things, Tesla was working on them by the end of the 19th century. I'm like, are you kidding me? You have to ask yourself, well, what took so long with wireless technology, with radios, with this remote control, and all the other things? What about things they still cannot dissect? Are they dumb, or they don't believe enough? They don't have enough finances, or they don't want to reveal? I'm not trying to go into conspiracy, or is someone not trying to even reveal to us if they're working on something and actually made something that we don't know about all his blueprints and patents and all this? Could it be that some of the things that we don't know that he came up with or was given to him as the knowledge, as the vision, was actually made later by the government, and we never found this out? Because as we'll cover this by the end of the episode, when Tesla died alone, broke in the hotel room, and when his cousin came to pick up his things in the morning, all of his blueprints and all of his paperwork when it comes to his achievements, when it comes to his innovations, were gone. The US government took and seized all of these things. Some of them were, I don't know how exactly, returned or exchanged later with the Serbian government and the Orthodox Church, but not all of them. Who knows who owes some of the best of the patents and blueprints that were never put into into the public arena? And I'm not even trying to go so much into conspiracy. I'm just saying, like, imagine if he was given recognition and money to do what he could have been. He wouldn't be broke. He wouldn't die like that. It's not just also about not being recognized, but he would have had more time and opportunity and energy to produce all these good things for the benefit of the whole world, of the whole world. But someone didn't not just believe in that. Someone also didn't want to appreciate that, because why would we do all these things for free for the humankind? Why would we do it for someone in Asia or in Africa? I don't care about them, because again, JP Morgan, Edison, and others, they're all about money. They're all about making themselves rich. So this is why when you find someone who is so childhood like and so naive like Tesla, but has good intentions, and you meet someone that I call them wolves from the Wall Street, not literally, but that's basically their description. You will see that the good guys will always end up suffering. And this is what was happening in Tesla's life his whole life. So After him working on the radio technology and actually demonstrating at the Madison Square Garden in 1899 that this was working, a New York Times writer suggested that Tesla's discovery could be used in war to create a remote control torpedo. But Tesla refuted him. He said, "You do not see there of a wireless torpedo. You see there the first of a race of robots, mechanical men, which will do the laborious work of the human race." Because Tesla was not pro-war. He wanted to help people with technology to be their lives to be easier, for people to enjoy technology and to stop wars. He wasn't pro-war. He didn't want his technology and inventions to be abused. So in his new Manhattan lab, um, Tesla's imagination led him to research the resonant frequencies of the Earth. Um, he mistakenly caused something that it says, at least in this book, that he caused an earthquake. But actually, I found the correction of this. He didn't cause mistakenly a real earthquake, but he did create a small mechanical oscillator again in 1898 that vibrated his New York lab and nearby buildings so intensely, and these people can check online if this is true, that people thought a real earthquake had happened, so they were calling police for help. This device was able to generate a range of high frequency oscillations, and that's why these, let's call them tremors, were happening in the buildings. Again, Tesla was outside his time. He didn't belong in the 19th century, because whatever he would come up with, it was so outside of his time. Okay, so later he moved to Colorado Springs. He began building a new experimental research station. He told local reporters that he intended to send a radio signal to Paris. When his lab was constructed, Tesla studied the phenomenon of lightning, and he made sure that what he considered his most important discovery to date to emphasize to others. He found that the Earth was literally what you said, Shaun, at the beginning of the podcast, was alive with electrical vibrations, and that the entire planet can be thrown into vibration like a tuning fork. These are actually his quotations, his words. So Tesla was absolutely certain that this phenomenon could be used to transmit unlimited electrical power and telecommunication signals anywhere in the world with virtually no signal loss or degradation. And this is another reason why he was so outside of his time, because no one else was able to compete with him. So once when his new lab was completed in Colorado Springs, this tower was so special because it stood over 80 feet tall and supported a 142-foot metal mast that was capped by a large copper ball. Inside the tower was the world's largest Tesla coil, which was to be used to send powerful electrical surges into the Earth. To further test his theory of the conductivity of the Earth, Tesla needed to create electrical effects on the scale of lightning. The result was the creation of the world's largest man-made lightning bolts, which shot out from his tower over 100 feet into the air, and which blew out the generator of the local power company. I found that very funny. The experiment was a resounding success for Nikola Tesla. His lightning flashed a current around the globe, proving that he would indeed deliver power to any point on the surface of the planet. But again, he didn't suit the business of people who wanted wealth for themselves. So, of course, eventually that didn't work out, or it works now, but you'll have to pay for something like that. So he wirelessly lit over 200 lamps from a distance of over 25 miles, proving that electricity could be transmitted great distances through the air. We'll have to skip. They're mentioning his powerful radio receiver that was picking up a strange rhythmic signal for which he had no explanation. So, Shaun, I'll ask you, what do you think about this? Because one night Tesla was receiving this, again, rhythmic signal for which he had no explanation. But one thing was certain, that the pulses were not of natural origin. He concluded that they must be communications from the stars. What he revealed when he revealed this incident, he was widely ridiculed for suggesting such nonsense. Wow. Okay, so it's very hard to develop a theory based on a couple of sentences. That's all we know. But that's the technology. Not only that he was receiving these flashes of light and visions in his mind, and he was like, "Wow, this is perfect." And whenever he would receive it and build it, it works. It works flawlessly. So I'm just thinking, this signal that was not a coincidence, and it was not just a random one because it was rhythmic. I mean, even now, scientists working for NASA, especially when they're dealing with astronomy, they say that all these planets and stars, they have their own frequencies, and they can actually like record how they can record different sounds in the universe, even though as I believe there is no sound in the universe, but through different technology they can produce whatever they're recording into sound, and actually tell us how, like, well, if you were be there, this is how the sound would be there on this planet or this star. So Tesla made this powerful radio that was receiving this rhythmic signal, and he was like, "I have no explanation. Who is sending me this? Because no one on Earth can. So could it be this like merely natural frequencies that objects in the sky are sending, or do you think it could be something or other origin?" And if we say, well, it could be other origin, well, then what could it be? Could it be maybe angelic beings trying to communicate with him? Or could it be maybe even what some people call aliens? I mean, it, it's impossible to prove anything, but because we love talking about fringe things, I was just asking, like, what do you think? Of course, we don't know, but like, what is your wildest idea?
Okay, so my my least wild idea is that Nikola Tesla was exactly right, that it's coming from the stars. And by that I mean like radiation interference. So our radio towers now are grounded against background radiation because they can interfere with the signal. And so he was picking up signals from our sun, which is a star. Uh, and so yeah, that's probably my least fun theory. Let's see, my most fun theory, man, was that while he was constructing his first radio receiver, and he had the only transmitter in the world right there, and he's like, look, the thing is receiving something. This is the only transmitter in the world, and it's off. How am I receiving something? Um, it had to have been because Chuck Norris went back in time, and he was sending Tesla signals. He was sending a Morse code for all roundhouse kick you in the face. Um, so I don't know. I don't think that it could have been. I don't think that it could have been like UFO stuff. Um, and one of the reasons for that is the UFO stuff really didn't kick off until like the 1950s. So this would have been the early 1900s. I
No, but I'm saying, let's suppose that there is extraterrestrial life. I'm not saying there is. I'm just saying, what if, then aliens and or the fallen ones, the fallen sons of God, they could have communicate through even ancient people in different ways. Maybe visions, maybe their own old technologies. So if you discover something that is new and you're trying to catch signals, then what if you catch something or someone that you're not supposed to, but what if the other side is trying to communicate to you in the same fashion? We get dreams and nightmares and so-called visions, and sometimes these are coming through the fallen ones. Take Joseph Smith, take others who are receiving the so-called message from angels, but actually being deceived. So I'm just thinking, like, could it be um, when I say extraterrestrial, it doesn't mean just little green or gray man. It also could have been like, what if these are the fallen ones? But also on the other side, what if are the good guys? But he never deciphered this, so he just let it go. But I think it's a mystery.
Right. I think you're right. I think it's a mystery. I, I think that we would have to try to dissect it by like the fruit that came from it, and we don't get that in just those few lines. But if we had more context, other than just like, hey, this is weird. What is this frequency that I'm picking up? If we had more context, then we could probably dig deeper into that.
Yeah. So after Tesla left Colorado Springs in January of 1900 to return to New York, he wrote a sensational article for Century magazine in which he eagerly described his plans for the future, where he could tap the sun's energy, control the weather with electricity, and end war with machines that would take it an impossibility, wirelessly transmit power and radio signals around the entire globe, engage in interplanetary communications, and even construct robotic automatons that would conduct themselves independent of operators. So he was planning to do all of this, like he planned to live 500 years. And then because this article became so famous, of course, JP Morgan read it, and then he called Tesla. Imagine screwing him and just still having audacity to counter him, like, oh, you didn't do anything to Tesla. So JP Morgan now makes a step and calls Tesla, well, doesn't call, but contacts Tesla. And Tesla, again, was naive that he met with JP Morgan, and he explained that he could build a world system of wireless communications to relay telephone signals, news, private messages, secure military communications, and even pictures to any point in the world. And this is the quotation: when wireless is fully applied, the earth will be converted into a huge brain capable of response in every one of its parts, Tesla promised. Morgan offered to fund the construction of the power plant and transmission tower necessary to pursue Tesla's fantastical claims. One would think that Tesla would be, balking at any offerings coming from Morgan because he couldn't be trusted. But Tesla was just naive. So after just 3 years earlier, Morgan was the one who was trying to steal Westinghouse company, costing Tesla his lucrative royalty agreement. Nevertheless, Tesla chose to turn his other cheek, so to speak, like Christians are doing, and to make a business deal with Morgan, which proved to be one of his biggest mistakes in his life. Tesla calculated that he would need about $1 million to construct the power station and transmission equipment. JP Morgan, of course, just like Edison, he said, no, I'll give you 150K instead of 1 million. And in exchange, I want 51% ownership in all of your existing and future patents and inventions relating to both electric lighting and wireless telegraphy or telephony. Tesla, man, I love him, but I have to say he was here acting stupid and foolishly. So Tesla accepted. I'm especially disappointed that he accepted 51% of ownership. So he accepted Morgan's hard-fisted terms and went to work immediately. Tesla acquired 200 acres of the cliffs on Long Island Sound and in December of 1901 began constructing on the project. The most prominent feature of the installation would be a 187-foot tower capped by a 55-ton steel sphere housing a massive Tesla coil. Beneath the tower was to be a shaft that would plunge 120 feet into the ground. 16 iron rods would be driven over 300 feet deeper for sending electrical currents deep into the earth. Tesla said that it is necessary for the machine to get a grip of the earth, otherwise it cannot shake the earth. In 1903, the tower structure was nearly complete and the transmitter was operational. As testing began, residents in the area have reported seeing all sorts of lightning flashing from the tower's poles, filling the air with, quote, blinding streaks of electricity which seemed to shoot off into the darkness on some mysterious errand. As soon as it was completed, it will be possible for a businessman in New York to dictate instructions and have them instantly appear in type at his office in London or anywhere else, Tesla explained in an interview. He'll be able to call up from his desk and talk to any telephone subscriber on the globe without any change whatever in the existing equipment. An inexpensive instrument, not bigger than a watch, will enable its bearer to hear anywhere. And this is what we see nowadays in smartwatches. So again, Tesla was planning this in 1903, more than 100 years ago. So, and it was planned to be inexpensive because, again, for Tesla, it wasn't about the profit. And it will enable the owner of this watch to hear anyone anywhere on sea or land, music or song, the speech or political leader, the address of an eminent man of science, and then Tesla also says, or the sermon of an eloquent clergyman delivered in some other space, in some other place, however distant. In the same manner, any picture, character, drawing, or print can be transferred from one to another place. More important than all of this, however, will be the transmission of power without wires, which will be shown on a large scale enough to carry conviction. In an attempt to convince the powerful Morgan to invest another large sum, because Tesla couldn't do this with only 150K, Tesla explained that the tower could be used for more than transmitting radio signals. It could be used to saturate the entire globe with electricity harmless to living things so that anyone could obtain usable power by simply sticking sticking wires in the soil. Morgan considered Tesla's words carefully and coldly replied, if anyone can draw on the power, where do we put the meter? He refused Tesla's pleadings for more money, forcing Tesla to use his own funds, which he knew would be insufficient to complete the project. Because, again, there was no profit for JP Morgan. Nobody was interested in picking up a project abandoned and now condemned by the most powerful man in America. Only months later, in 1904, the US Patent Office stripped Tesla of his radio patents and awarded them to the Italian inventor Guglielmo Marconi instead. Marconi had used radio technology pioneered by Tesla 11 years earlier to transmit the letter S in Morse code over 2,000 miles, which gave him no claim to the patents, of course. What did him the claim, though? He had the financial backing of Morgan, Edison, and steel baron Andrew Carnegie, all of whom held sway in every level of government. By 1905, Tesla ran out of money and was forced to lay off the Wardenclyffe workers and shut down the facility. Newspapers describe this as his $1 million folly, to which Tesla responded, it is a simple feat of scientific electrical engineering, only expensive, blind, faint-hearted, doubting world. So the ending of this quote by Tesla, as if a prophet would come up to people and give them a message of God, and they wouldn't believe, and he would rebuke them for being blind and doubting, because this is how Tesla called the world. He says, "You're blind, faint-hearted, doubting world." In 1906, on his 50th birthday, presented a 200 horsepower bladeless turbine engine to the world. He was also contracted by the Waltham Watch Company to build the world's first and only air friction speedometer, which he did patent. Later, Marconi was stripped of his achievement, and that was recognized rightfully and given back to Tesla. A year later, Tesla was forced to declare another bankruptcy because of all the taxes, and he wasn't the Wizard of the West anymore. Now the news media was ridiculing him as a penniless wizard. Such a shame how people treated him. So he was humiliated, and he began to spend more time visiting New York City parks, rescuing injured pigeons, and nursing them back to health in his hotel room at the Hotel New York where he lived. I'll stop here, but also, yeah, he had desires to produce flying machines, because there's a story in New York Herald Tribune in 1911 that published Tesla's story called Tesla's New Monarch of Machines. And there, Tesla was proclaiming that he was working on the flying machines that will have neither wings or propellers or any onboard source of fuel. So again, he was centuries ahead of all these people, not just because he was getting all these visions and because he knew how to construct them, but because he was so selfless in providing these things and giving them for free to the world. I also want to address a little bit when it comes to his eccentricities and how one Eastern Orthodox priest dissected Tesla's life and actually found him to be one of a saint. But before I do that, I also want to give you time to, when it comes to Tesla's end of life and his bankruptcy and how he was screwed by JP Morgan, and desire to create flying machines and working on those blueprints. I would just like you to give you time to comment on that.
Yeah, I wish at that time people would have been aware enough to have assigned like an agent or a manager to Tesla, because he was somebody who was so mechanically minded that he didn't take into account just how wicked people are. Um, you know, I think that Tesla was. I mean, I read in the book that you had me read for this that he had certain compulsions, like he would have to do things in numbers of three. Yeah, and so when I think of Nikola Tesla, I think of Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory. Um, I think that maybe he would have been not only one of the first people that we could look at and say, "Oh man, he's a super genius," but maybe also one of the first people we could look at and say, "Oh yeah, he was autistic." Like this was a guy who didn't understand social cues. This was a guy who didn't understand the wickedness of people. He was somebody who just really had a fascination with things and wanted to create a better world, and didn't take into account that men are willing to kill each other uh, over greed, which was something that he just couldn't understand. Why does somebody want to have $1 billion when you could feed 1 billion people? Like, yeah, it just doesn't make sense. Um, yeah, I think that his naivety was a symptom of his goodness, that he really just wanted to help people, and he couldn't even fathom that people are that wicked out there. Um, and yet that was ultimately his downfall. Um, but later, 100 years later, um, he's justified in the sense that his ideas are coming to fruition now. I mean, we're just barely catching up with where he was at 100 years ago. Um, so yeah, I feel like he got a really raw deal. I mean, I know he got a really raw deal. Um, and I wish that we could have had, you know, even some of the patents that he had. The sad thing is, I don't even know if we would be able to understand them yet.
Or someone has them. I just don't believe that the other half that is missing, that is outside of Serbia, Serbian Orthodox Church, and Serbian scientists and government. I just don't believe they're in the hands of right people. I just
No,
don't believe that.
no.
Because if Edison and JP Morgan were able to do so much evil 150 years ago, imagine nowadays. Because corruption is only getting worse throughout the world.
Well, and not only that, but since Morgan had a 51% control of all of his patents, he could have just been like, I this goes against this company that I have, so burn it. This goes
Dude,
against
I
this
actually
company.
wouldn't be surprised if when Tesla died, it wouldn't be maybe necessarily government that took the patents. What if he sent his people to take care of paperwork and blueprints? And I mean, who?
Yeah.
Again, I'm not hating anyone. I'm not going creating conspiracy theories. I'm just saying what is plausible. It is possible. I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah.
we heard about craziest things in history happening. Like, so I think this is very plausible.
Yeah, especially since he has that contract that gave him 51% over all past and future patents. He could have just uh shown that to somebody and said, "Look, I now have full custody over all of his intellectual material. It's all mine." And yep. And then it gets locked away somewhere where it won't benefit the majority of people, cuz like he said, how do we put a meter on it?
Okay, so I just want to read a couple of things that will show us that since his childhood he was different, and then we'll switch to some of the theological, spiritual things. So hopefully we'll be done in like 20 minutes. And I have provided sources in the episode in the episode text for this podcast, so people can check. So Tesla was aware as a boy that he was not like other boys in his thoughts, in his amusements, and in his hobbies. He could do the things that other lads his age usually do, and many things that they could not do. It was these latter things that interested him most, and he could find no companions who would share his enthusiasm for them. This reminds me of my desire to study theology and fringe stuff with my church friends, but they don't care about the same things as I do. And I'm not comparing myself to Tesla because I'm not a genius, but I'm just recognizing being different, it can come with a cost, including social life. This situation caused him to isolate himself from contemporaries and made him aware that he was destined for an unusual place, if not great accomplishments in life. Practically all of his life, he experienced a peculiar reaction when breathing deeply. When he breathed deeply, he was overcome by a feeling of lightness, as if his body had lost all weight. And he should, he concluded, be able to fly through the air merely by his will to do so. He did not learn in boyhood that that was unusual in this respect. A strange power permitted him to perform unusual feats in mathematics. He possessed it from early boyhood, but had considered it a nuisance and tried to get rid of it because it seemed beyond his control. Nikola Tesla needed no model to test his inventions. They appeared before his eyes as functioning realities that he could stop and start as though they were really there. If he thought of an object, it would appear before him exhibiting the appearance of solidity and massiveness. So greatly did these visions possess the attributes of actual objects that it was usually difficult for him to distinguish between vision and reality. This abnormal faculty functioned in a very useful fashion in his schoolwork with mathematics. If he was given a problem in arithmetic or algebra, it was immaterial to him whether he went to the blackboard to work it out or whether he remained in his seat. His strange faculty permitted him to see a visioned blackboard on which the problem was written. And there appeared on this blackboard all of the operations and symbols required in working out the solution. Each step appeared much more rapidly that he could work it out by hand on the actual slate. As a result, he could give the solution almost as quickly as the whole problem was stated. Tesla's powers of memorizing were prodigious. A quick reading of a page gave him a permanent record of it. He could always recall before his eyes a photographic record of it to be read and could study at his convenience. Study for Tesla was a far different process than for an average person. He had no need for a reference library. He could consult in his mind any page of any textbook he had read, any formula, equation, or item in a table of logarithms, and they would flash before his eyes. He would recite scores of books complete from memory. The saving in time which this made possible in research work was tremendous. And this was well, I'll also read this. In an interview with Weishart, published in the American Magazine of April 1921, and in Mr. O'Neill's book, Tesla describes his faculty as follows. During my boyhood, I had suffered from a peculiar affliction due to the appearance of images, which were often accompanied by strong flashes of light. When a word was spoken, the image of the object designed would present itself so vividly to my vision that I could not tell whether that I saw was real or not. Even though I reached out and passed my hand through it, the image would remain fixed in space. I want us to remember this when a word was spoken, not his word. This is his quotation. When a word was spoken, the image of the object designated would present itself so vividly to my vision that I could not tell whether what I saw was real or not. In trying to free myself from these tormenting appearances, I tried to concentrate my thoughts on something peaceful, quieting scene I had witnessed. This would give me the momentary relief. But when I had done it 2 or 3 times, the remedy would begin to lose its force. Then I began to make mental excursions beyond the small world of my actual knowledge. Day and night, in my imagination, I went on journeys, saw new places, cities, countries, and all the time I tried hard to make these imaginary things very sharp and clear in my mind. I imagined myself living in countries I had never seen, and I made imaginary friends who were very dear to me and really seemed alive. This I did constantly until I was 17, when my thoughts turned seriously to invention. Then, to my delight, I found I could visualize with the greatest facility. I needed no models, no drawings or experiments. I could picture them all in my mind. And I'll stop here. And now, when it comes to spirit, well, I first want to ask you. I mean, come on, when he was even a teenager and a boy, Shaun, before the image of a blueprint would show as 3D image before him, he heard a word that was like given a command, and then the blueprint would show as 3D image in front of him. I mean, who has this power to do so? I mean, come on.
Yeah, he definitely had a very unique, special ability that when he was younger was something that was a problem for him because it prevented him from doing things that everyone else did. And yet, in his future life, that same ability would allow him to do what nobody else could do. And so yeah, I totally think that it was definitely some sort of gift from God that allowed him to do these things. But also, I'm sure, as with all gifts from God, uh, if we were to go in and do an autopsy of Nikola Tesla, I think that we would find that there were certain parts of the brain that were developed in ways that are not normal, and so that allowed him to be able to do and handle the things that God had for him.
Yeah, it seems like God was speaking to him like God would speak to young prophets. I mean, my mind goes to Samuel, but again, I may be exaggerating. Um, This is a very good article when it comes to Eastern Orthodox priests dissecting and believing that Tesla's life and achievements and visions were from God. Do you mind if you can start please reading? There are a few of these bullet points.
All right. Tesla's deeds. In this case, these words of our Lord Jesus Christ seem to be the primary principle of evaluation. You will know them by their fruits. The fruits of Tesla's work are life giving, both in literal and spiritual sense. On one hand, he had ushered the world into a new age of civilization, a new era of civilization, the age of electromagnetic powering, and such like industry. Need I mention? Uh, sorry. Thank you very much. Need I mention to list but a few contributions: his revolutionary AC induction motor and transformer, or his systems for wireless transmission of power and information, or his colossal contributions in other fields such as X ray analysis, radio communication, or remote control, anticipations of the internet and mobile telephony, notwithstanding. On the other hand, he was a light himself, but in an additional, I'd say in a spiritual sense, for Tesla was a revelation of the mystery of light as a person as well. As scientist, he is probably one of the most important inventors of all time. As a person, he is doubtlessly a remarkable example of ascetic self restraint, a man committed to purity of thought and gentleness of conduct. On both levels, he has done us inestimable good. To give life to others is good. To be good is enlightening to others. Tesla was both. Therefore, the Serbian Orthodox Church has never hesitated to recognize Tesla as one of her own. I shall go further and say this: there is a bond, a special one, yet to be explored um, apophatically, between the person of Nikola Tesla and what I perceive as the life giving energies of the Holy Spirit. These are given to all creatures by our Lord Jesus Christ, the Logos, through whom all things were made. As he himself says, I am the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. In reference to that, the iconic image of Tesla sitting amongst sitting amongst lightning released by his magnetic transmitter in Colorado Springs laboratory with a book open in front of him seems to be um, a prophetic spiritual event also, not only an amazing display of scientific supergenius at work, for it is an image of communion with the physical and metaphysical sides of the mystery of light at the same time, a sublime initiation into the beneficent workings of light. Tesla's words. But there is more. Namely, one cannot forget Tesla's own words on the matter of faith, God, and religion, words set in a clearly Christian context. I see a friend hurt, and it hurts me too. My friend and I are one. And now I see stricken down an enemy, a lump of matter which, of all the lumps of matter in the universe, I care least for, and still it grieves me. Does this not prove that each of us is only a part of a whole? The following meditations of this outstanding man are illustrative too. Many a year I have thought and pondered, lost myself in speculation and theories, considering man as a mass moved by a force, viewing his inexplicable movement in the light of a mechanical one, and applying the simple principles of mechanics to the analysis of the same until I arrived at these solutions, only to realize that they were taught to me in early childhood. These three words, uh, food, peace, work, sound the keynotes of the Christian religion. Their scientific meaning and purpose now clear to me: to increase human energy. When we recognize this, we cannot help wondering how profoundly wise and scientific and how immensely practical the Christian religion is, and in what a marked contrast it stands in this respect to other religions. It is a quintessential distinctive mark of Christianity not only to tolerate one's enemy, but to love him regardless of his hostile hatred. As is said by Christ himself, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. To him who strikes you on the cheek, offer the other cheek also. Hence, these thoughts are laid par excellence in Christian spirit. And there is more to be added here. For as we can see, the mentioned words are a clear example not only of Tesla's firm belief in the primordial equality of all human beings as persons, a sense of unity appropriated through spiritual empathy, but also of the fact that he believed that all human beings reach their full potential by living according to what he thought are key postulates of the teaching of Christ and his followers. And furthermore, he ventures to deduce scientific implications of the listed precepts of Christian religion, which he adds is a special and different in relation, or is special and different in relation to others. It is certainly true that at other times he expounded views which are not entirely in tune with what we deem as sound, say in a fully orthodox sense. For instance, his equaling the Buddhist doctrine of equality of human beings with the Christian one, or his negation of religion as religion, or his musings on the transience of personhood of any given individual. Still, these views are explainable by his relentless commitment to the service of all mankind, by his liberal comprehensiveness, and by the fact that he understood very well that God and religion are not equal or mutually reducible. In this special way, Tesla gave himself to God, for religion may be, and often is, a distortion of what God truly is. And that is why, according to one source, he who says the following: religion is simply an ideal. It is an ideal force that tends to free the human being from the material bounds. I do not believe that matter and energy are intangible any more than are the body and soul. There is just,
Interchangeable.
oh,
Interchangeable.
thank you.
It's okay.
I do not believe that matter and energy are interchangeable any more than the body and the soul. There is just so much matter in the universe, and it cannot be destroyed. As I see life on this planet, there is no individuality. It may sound ridiculous to say so, but I believe each person is but a wave passing through space, ever changing from minute to minute as it travels along. Finally, someday, just becoming dissolved. Even in the words quoted, however, we see that Tesla we see that Tesla does admit that religion, no matter if it is a projection of human desire onto what truly is, may be a liberating force, and the reserve in regard to human individuality is qualified by, as he said, viewing life as it is on this planet, or as theologians would say, life in the condition introduced by the primordial fall. Finally, the equaling of Christianity and Buddhism, again, is but a function of his faith in peace and oneness of all created being, understood as a consequence of the doctrine of the fundamentally divine potential of each human being as they stand, or as he did, kneel before God, not necessarily before religion, taken as what finite and fallen humans imagine God is, and even in that case, Tesla is affirmative again. For ages, the idea that each of us is a brother or sister and part of a whole has been proclaimed in the consummately wise teachings of religion, probably not alone as a means of ensuring peace and harmony among men, but as a deeply founded truth. The Buddhist expresses it in one way, the Christian in another, but both say we are all one. Finally, these words taking their cue from Aristotle and are indicative of the widest theological sense. I am convinced that the whole cosmos is united both in material and spiritual sense. Within the universe, there is a center wherefrom we receive all our strength, all inspiration. It attracts us. I feel its power and values, which it emits to the whole of the universe, and thus keeps it in harmony. I have not fathomed the mystery of that center, but I know it exists. And when I wish to give it some material attribute, then I think it is light. And when I try to understand it spiritually, then it is beauty and charity. The one who carries his faith inside feels strong. Labor is a joy to him, for he feels himself to be at one, or yeah, at one with the universal harmony. Tesla's ecclesial inheritance. The arguments proposed above suffice for us, as the Serbian Orthodox Church, to endorse Nikola Tesla as one of our own. This ensues from the universality of the Orthodox Church's spirituality, doctrine, and faith, particularly from its capacity to endorse otherness economically. It is precisely this that allows us to elevate Nikola Tesla as one of our own, although he belongs to all of mankind despite or because of his unprecedented uniqueness. He was the son of Tesla, a Serbian Orthodox priest.
You don't have to read anymore. Those
Okay.
first two bullet points were most important because I wanted to allow this priest to speak his own words instead of us paraphrasing, but he was actually dissecting in a theological, but also um, spiritual way and philosophical way that Nikola Tesla was saying, by using his own word. So this priest was analyzing, saying like, yeah, Tesla, and this is what I said, where you at the beginning said many atheists want to claim Tesla as his own. He was not an atheist. He was not an agnostic. He did believe in something. He was also a well-known. He was familiar with the Bible, but he didn't have that what we call born again personal relationship with God that we have nowadays. I'll just read a few quotations when it comes to spirituality. We'll be done in a couple of minutes. Um, yeah, so this is a quotation, some of the quotations from Tesla. He said that the gift of mental power comes from God, divine being. And if we concentrate our minds on that truth, we become in tune with this great power. My mother had taught me to seek all truth in the Bible. Therefore, I devoted the next few months to the study of this work. Next one. When we recognize this, we cannot help wondering how profoundly wise and scientific and how immensely practical the Christian religion is, and in what a marked contrast it stands in this respect to other religions. It is unmistakably the result of practical experiment and scientific observation, which have extended through the ages, while other religions seem to be the outcome of merely abstract reasoning. Another one, in my heart, I'm deeply religious, though not in the orthodox sense of that word. I'm dedicated to the belief that the greatest secrets of our being still remain to be explained. So Tesla again was raised in an Orthodox as an Orthodox Christian later in his life. He did not consider himself to be a believer in the Orthodox sense, like he said, and he opposed religious fanaticism. He had a profound respect for Buddhism, as we just mentioned, reflected in his beliefs. And it is said that he had a mixture of both Christianity and Buddhism as his philosophy. However, at the same time, his religious views have remained unknown due to the other statements that he has made. And again, he was very private, he was very eccentric, he was focusing and spending his life on inventions. And later, when he was broke and disappointed for God knows how many times in his life, he was just living in his own hotel room, feeding pigeons, and he died alone in poverty. So it's not like he was talking to people about his faith or lack of faith and religion. It could be eloquently noticed that Tesla, in his description of natural phenomena, used the terminology of the ancient Sanskrit language. As far back as 1891, he described the universe as a kinetic system filled with energy that can be reached from any point on our or any other planets. The nature of matter, antimatter, or the atomic structure is described in the Vedas in detail. So, yeah, he was a bit fond of some of the Eastern religions, but he still never gave up fully on the Bible and Eastern Orthodox, even though he was not a committed Christian. So, what does this mean? It means basically that we don't know how he ended his life. When it comes to spiritual life, we don't know if he was what we call saved. We don't know if he uh, in the last days and moments of his life, if he dedicated his life to God and Christ, and if he ended up being in God's kingdom. But again, I would dare to say, even though no one deserves salvation, based on his life, based on his legacy, based on his selfless and very extremely noble motives, on his ascetic life, avoiding women, trying to avoid temptation, sin in that regard, not caring for materialism, not caring for the riches of this life. If anyone would deserve salvation based on works, I would say it's him. But of course, salvation without faith is impossible. If you're just trying to work for it, then it will look like you're a member of any other religion. But yes, this was in shortest, by in little, just a little over 2 hours, Nikola Tesla's life, primarily his visions, his inventions, his spiritual life, his philosophical life, and of course also his business life and the failures of so many of these deals, and how people, especially Edison and JP Morgan, took advantage of him. And this is why it should be noted in all the history textbooks of these two scumbags who, again, if Tesla deserved a paradise, they deserve the opposite. And I'm not I'm not sad or apologizing for saying that. Now, you have the honor to conclude the podcast. What do we think about Tesla? He was everything but an atheist, and he was everything but an open book. He was such an enigma and such a great man with so many godly and Christian characteristics.
Yeah, he may not have been a Christian in faith, but he was definitely one in conduct. The way that he conducted himself was definitely in accordance with the way that he had been raised. One could say that he was culturally Christian at the very least. Of course, at that time, all of the West was culturally Christian at the very least. And the Orthodox Church in Serbia claims him as an Orthodox, and of course, I, being that he was a child of a priest. I know that he would have been baptized. He would have received all of the sacraments. And so, yeah, I have no reason to think that, those who hold to a more orthodox view, I don't think that there would be any problem with praying for Nikola. That, had he not received whatever grace necessarily in this life, that the church can facilitate that for him. It's not our beliefs, Nico. We don't. We you know we're the more evangelical type. So we're like, you get one chance, homie, get it right. But I agree with you. I think that if anybody deserved heaven, because nobody does, none of us do. Um, but Nikola Tesla would definitely be he would make the short list of people who I think would qualify for that, just in his life of giving. Um, and of course we don't know a lot of stuff about Nikola Tesla. We don't know, like you said, we don't know about what were his habits. I mean, this could have been a man who attended church every Sunday and just didn't do it in the spotlight. We have no idea. Um, so it's hard to say. But I think that he's definitely somebody that we should try um, to emulate. You know, I think that he's somebody that we could gain a lot from as far as trying to follow his example, especially in trying to establish peace and facilitate um, necessary things like power, energy, water, um, all those things that are so life giving to people all over the world. I mean, that was Nicola's dream. That was his dream, to be able to allow everybody all over the world to benefit from the the inventions that were just kind of given to him through revelation. And he never got to see that come true. But hopefully in the future we can make that dream come true.
Yeah, I'll just end up with this. I truly hope he made it to heaven, not by his efforts, but I mean, you have to have some sort of faith to live the life that he lived and to have that motive of your heart to give everyone everything for free. And the way he was given those visions, they will be appropriated with words and light, and they will be perfectly working, and they will be still being deciphered by people a century after that. And this technology was never abused by him. I still believe that it was God direct or through his angelic beings speaking to Tesla and giving him all of this. But unfortunately, as it's often the case, whenever human greed is involved, all of this, including God's giftings and desires for humankind, are abused because here the Bible keeps being proven over and over again that it's love for the money that is the root of all the evil. And unfortunately, Edison and J.P. Morgan were the embodiment of this greediness. And as we said, Tesla was everything but an atheist, but he was also not an extremely devoted, what we call born again Christians. But if he made it to heaven, I would love to hang out and talk to him one day. And if anyone in this story, like we said, unapologetically deserve to be damned by God, was those two people whose names don't even deserve to be in textbooks, but unfortunately they are. That being said, this Sunday night, Pastor Anthony Delgado and I will be talking about his latest book, God-Shaped Prayer. Shaun and I will be talking most probably next Friday, but we still have to agree upon this. We'll be talking about the projects and experiments that were happening in real life in history that were um, later served as inspiration for the Stranger Things TV show, probably the best TV show of all times. I know I'm being biased again, so we'll be going probably, if we agree on that topic, we'll be dissecting. We'll have to read some books. And next Sunday, I don't know. I don't have any guests yet, but we'll see. That being said, God bless you. Hopefully, you enjoy this story about Nikola Tesla. So many details, so many failed business deals, so many hurts and disappointments. Yet he never gave up, continue being himself. He continued believing. He was even rebuking people for having not having faith. And in many ways, he acted like not just like a Christian, but as a prophet. So the question mark in the episode title, was he a prophet? Most probably he was. but a prophet of a different kind than your Old Testament prophets. God bless you. Be encouraged. Go and read about Tesla and all the sources we have provided in this episode podcast, and we'll see you in 2 nights. God bless all of you, including your Troy and the other 2 people in the live chat. Take care.